Any public speakers? And that would be Mr. Bowden. Mr. Bowden, you've got the mic.
Thank you. I'm waiting for Polly. Our track star over there. I stood up here about an hour ago and saying that we needed better communication. Between then and now, communication did improve. Major step forward and needs to be acknowledged, not in your department, another department, but it went forward. Coming down here today on the Henry Hudson Highway from Hartsdale, at the bridge, it's a 2-lane road coming from the Yonkers City line to the bridge. There are 2 lanes open going past south of the bridge. But on the bridge itself, there are 3 lanes open. Why are there 3 lanes open? Because nobody's watching and nobody's thinking. So the people see the lines in the 2 lanes and they shift over to the 3rd lane. But since there are only 2 toll booths open, there's a merge and everybody's fighting to get back into the 2 lanes to go through. Whose responsibility is to see that there is no reason to have 3 lanes open on the bridge? If you had the same 2 lanes coming from Yonkers and going past, there would be no merge created. And the traffic backup there on Monday extended to Yonkers, because I came down Monday for another meeting. Whose responsibility is this? I asked your office and they said that it was an MTA problem. Pay attention. Why are there 3 lanes open on the bridge when there are 2 lanes coming in and 2 lanes going out and only 2 toll booths? They can't answer it. I'm sorry that you don't pay attention to me. When you don't pay attention to me, it says, maybe you ought to be replaced too. No, I'm not happy with being ignored by bridges and tunnels. You do idiotic things. You put out idiotic signs that have been banned in California that give the driver no information. And they got little bitty arrows like that. And you're supposed to see those little lines and know which of the 4 lanes you're supposed to be in. And you ignore me. And I'm not a joke.
30 seconds, please.
I'm sorry. When you pay attention to me, or to anybody else that has a decent, reasonable suggestion, we're entitled to be listened to. And when somebody doesn't pay attention and puts 3 lanes where there should only be 2, and you can't stop them, there's something wrong somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Okay. That ends the public comments period. Approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? So, second. All in favor? Motion carries. Committee work plan, any changes?
No changes on the work plan.
Okay, take over.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. First, I just want to say I greatly appreciate the opportunity to sit in this chair while Jim is working with New York City Transit.
Just tell Jim, remember Wally Pipp, the experience.
I will do that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim Fortunato for the operations report.
Thank you. The report on operations begins on page 16. We will be reporting on June and July of 2015. Traffic was higher in June with 26.1 million crossings as compared with 25.4 million crossings in June of 14. This represents a 3.0% increase. Traffic was higher in July with 26.9 million crossings as compared with 25.4 million crossings in July of 14. This represents a 5.8% increase. Rainfall amounts in June totaled June 2015 totaled 4.8 inches over 12 days versus 3.7 inches over 7 days in June of 2014, and rainfall amounts in July of 2015 totaled 3.5 inches over 8 days versus 4 inches over 9 days in July of 14. Easy Pass volume increased by 4.9% in June of 2015 as compared to June of 2014, while crossings using cash and other payment methods declined 6.6% for the month. Passenger car travel was up 2.9%, and other vehicle travel was up 4.5% from June of 2014. Easy Pass volume increased by 7% in July of 2015 as compared to July of 2014, while crossings using cash and other payments increased by 0.1% for the month. Passenger car travel was up 6.1%, and other vehicle travel was up 2.1% from July of 2014. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for August 2015 are 5.5% more than the same period in 2014. Labor Day holiday traffic weekend, that's Thursday through Monday, was up 4.06% more than the holiday weekend last year. Thursday and Friday being the heaviest traffic days, exceeding over 900,000 vehicles each day. I would also like to report that Bridges and Tunnels will suspend all roadway lane closures with the exception of permanent construction zones at its 9 crossings from 9 a.m. Thursday, September 24th through 9 a.m. Saturday, September 26th for Pope Francis's visit to New York. All crossings will be fully staffed with toll collectors, and there will be a robust law enforcement presence to ensure a safe commute for those utilizing MTA Bridge and Tunnel facilities during the Pope's visit. We are also working with NYPD, MTA Office of Security, and MTA Police, Transcom, and the region's transportation agencies, including New York City and New York State DOT, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, to make sure travelers are aware of traffic and transit conditions while the Pope is in town. This concludes the report on operations. If there are no questions, we'll move on.
This is a continuation of a dialogue had with your predecessor concerning a bridge I take 2 days a week called the Henry Hudson Bridge. If I correctly understand, and by the way, there are ongoing public complaints up the gazoo, as the Greeks would say, or the Chinese, or any other language. It's terrible. You can have a tailback going north in the evening hours that goes back to Fort Tryon Park, and in the morning hours to 254th Street and beyond. And the traffic is, the public is really had its belly full. And the reason I focus on it is the following. As I understand the facts, we were asked a year or two ago to approve the removal of the toll booths, the creation of a plaza or plazas, and there was going to be some fiber optics installed underneath the ground to support the tolls. Subsequent to that, which was then told to us as being a relatively routine procedure that would take a matter of months. Subsequent to that, what has happened is somebody hit water somewhere along the line, and what you're now doing is you're carving into the hillside a little bit. You're moving traffic back and forth, left and right, and the public has really had a belly full of this. Now, the reason I say that to you is there isn't a day, Jim, that I don't bother you the past few weeks since you've been there. Maybe I missed a day here and there. To tell you that the tailback is going back 20 and 30 blocks. Over and above the pollution, over and above the anger, when the public drives by and sees the workmen in the morning drinking a cup of coffee on the side while they are standing waiting, not good for us. This has really impacted negatively on us. So what I am about to propose to you is the following, for the future, because there's not a heck of a lot I can do about today. One, when you have an improvement project like this, and it's presented to the board, you ought to say how long this project is going to take, whether it be the Verrazano Bridge or the Whitestone Bridge or any other bridge. An approximate time frame for the beginning of the job and for the ending of the job. Number two, I would love to hear what the cause of the water was and who caused us to strike water out of a rock on the Palisades area. I'd like to know that, and I'd like to know as a second point, what do we do in terms of due diligence before we embark on a job to determine whether or not there are conditions like that? And number three, I'd like to suggest that to the extent you can, you coordinate with DOT, which does a fine job in terms of trying to scope out where people are. But the constant moving back and forth of the lines of traffic. Last night, I just got an absolute earful from the members of the community board. We got to do something here, Jim. This is awful.
Do we have a duration, is Joe, on the completion of the project?
Yeah, the roadway work will be complete in December for both levels. Upper level probably sooner than that. The work that currently is restricting it down to 2 lanes. The gantry then is going to be installed, and there'll be, but that will that will go on for several months into next year. But there will be no impact on roadway. We'll still have 3 roadway lanes open at that point.
On traffic through going either north or south, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that will be the end of this project, correct?
That's the end of this project, yes.
What's next?
Well, this project is an enabling project for the reconstruction then of both toll plazas.
I'm sorry?
This project is an enabling project that will facilitate the reconstruction of both the upper and the lower level toll plazas.
Why is that necessary?
It's necessary due to the condition of the 1930s era roadway on the upper level.
You are putting in all new roadway as you go along on this heading south. I want to know, has somebody said to you, or have you concluded that the roadway is in such a condition it has to be replaced? You have to do more? Is this journey really necessary? Are we wisely using limited resources?
I believe we are, yes.
Is that going to come back to us as a matter to be voted on?
Is it going to be a low bid contract or going to be a?
It's, I mean, it's part of the capital program plan that was approved by the board.
Board approved the toll plaza. Board approved the gantry. Board approved the fiber optics. It didn't approve, to the best of my knowledge, looking at what I saw and voted on, going beyond that, some great edifice complex. What I'd like to do, and I'm happy to do it offline, I'd like to get a sense of what you're doing, why you're doing it, whether it has to be done, and when it can be done.
I think we'd be happy to have that offline discussion with you.
Yes.
So let's do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Myrtler. If you could just make the committee aware of a response to Mr. Myrtler's comments, and if we can just move on with the agenda.
Customer Environment Survey begins on page 42, and some highlights for the second quarter are B&T striped 105,900 linear feet of roadway in the second quarter at the Verrazano, Marine Parkway, Cross Bay, Throgs Neck, and Bronx Whitestone bridges. B&T repaired 581 potholes in the second quarter, seeing a 47% decrease in potholes over the same period in 2014. B&T swept 2,663 roadway miles of lane miles of roadway at its bridges and tunnels in the second quarter. 89.9% of roadway lights were operational in the second quarter, nearly identical to the same period in 2014. B&T cleaned 1,093 storm drains in the second quarter, more than double of that cleaned in the second quarter of 2014, as this continues to be one of the focus areas in our enhanced maintenance and bridge preservation programs. This concludes the Customer Environment Survey.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Moving on to the safety report, Jim Foley.
Beginning on page 52 and through page 57 of the charts and graphs, showing the 5-year summary of employee accidents, lost time injuries, customer collisions, injury collisions, and contractor injuries. For the first 7 months in 2015, the number of employee accident reports has decreased 24.1%, and the lost time injuries for the year have decreased 30.8%. During the same period, total customer collision rate has increased 5.6%, and the injury collision rate has decreased 2.1%. Please review these reports. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thanks. We'll move on to the Easy Pass report. The July Easy Pass report begins on page 65. The June report is also in the book, just focusing on July. Our Easy Pass market share was 84%, up almost a percentage point from the year before. More than 29,500 Easy Pass accounts were opened in July, including more than 14,300 on-the-go accounts, almost half of the total. These on-the-go numbers continue to be driven, as we've been discussing, by in-lane tag sales, and more than 610,000 on-the-go tags have been sold in the lane since that program began. We're also up about 45% year to year on in-lane tag sales since total increase versus the same period of time the previous year. So it's been continues to be a huge hit. There's no comments or questions on the Easy Pass report. I'll move on to the financial report.
Any comments, questions? Move on.
Again, with the financial report, I'll just focus on July, but the June report is in the book as well. The July report begins on page 84. And just to remind you, starting this month, we compare the results against the July mid-year forecast that was presented to the Finance Committee by headquarters during the last board cycle. Toll revenue through July was $1.20 billion, which is 1.1%, $11.4 million better than planned. Traffic up 1% against the budget year to date. Preliminary August looking similar. Year to year, traffic is up about 5.8% in July. Again, despite the March toll increase, preliminary August results also look very good. On the expense side, we're at $240.5 million through July, about $16 million, 6.2% lower than planned. Non-labor costs were about 7% less than planned, $7.3 million, primarily due to the timing. And labor costs were lower as well, about $8.8 million, 5.6%, primarily due to payroll vacancies. Overtime down about 4.3%, almost $630,000. And our support to mass transit, $657 million through July, about $39.6 million, 6.4% better than planned. Also, how much more? $39.6 million, about 6.5%. Pardon me? Also, on the financial side, in the book is the mid-year forecast monthly allocation on page 98 for your information, and of course the preliminary budget, as I said, presented by headquarters in July. So we continue to be here if you have any questions about that. Moving on, if there's no financial questions, we'll move on to the capital program project status report. Joe Keane, our chief engineer.
So the report on the capital program for July and August begins on pages 108 and 119 of the book, respectively. In July and August, there were 24 commitments made with a total value of $16.6 million. Year-to-date, there have been 59 commitments made with a total value of $280.6 million. This compares to a plan that called for 51 commitments and a value of $380.9 million. Overall, to date, 68% of our 2015 annual commitment plan of $412.9 million has been committed. There were no completions made in July and August. Year-to-date, there have been 8 project completions with a cumulative value of $172.5 million. This represents approximately 83% of the annual completion plan of $208.5 million. There were 25 task-level closeouts totaling $6 million in July and August. Overall, year-to-date, there have been 42 task closeouts totaling $86.7 million. There are a number of changes to forecasted dates for remaining 2015 commitments shown at the bottom of page 119. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Ms. Joe, we'll move on to procurements.
Good afternoon. Procurements start on page 130. There are no non-competitive procurements. There is one ratification this month, the issuance of a purchase order which rides a competitively bid New York City Transit miscellaneous procurement contract to furnish, deliver, install, and provide training for a GPS tracking system for bridge and tunnel snowplow truck fleet in the amount of $61,900. There is one competitive public work proposal, a design-build project for the replacement and relocation of electrical and mechanical equipment at the Marine Parkway Bridge and at the Cross Bay Bridge facilities. That's in the negotiated amount of $21,237,000. There are 2 personal service contracts, one for construction administration and inspection services for electrical and mechanical rehabilitation project, including steel repairs and painting of the Marine Parkway Bridge, and also one for inspection services for structural repairs and the removal of the tune mast damper and the inspection of select cable panels at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. And these contracts and the total amount of $13,848,570. We have 4 contract modifications, 1 miscellaneous service modification for funding to upgrade and improve the control systems for the underbridge traveler unit at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge in the amount of $354,512, and 3 personal service modifications. 2 are for adding design support services during construction for projects at the Bronx Whitestone and the Marine Parkway bridges, and 1 is for funding to increase inspection services under contract MPO 6 at the Marine Parkway Bridge due to added construction work. And these 3 modifications total $2,994,316. The value of all our procurements total $38,497,000. These are.
I ask whether you have, on the non-personal service contract awards, a date for the commencement of work and an estimated date for completion in each of the contracts?
We do.
What is your best guesstimate as to the successful attainment of those dates in the past, based on past performance?
We spend a lot of time and effort tracking them. So we send out monthly a report for each contract to each department, so they're aware of when an expiration report basically for those types of contracts. So we do spend a lot of time tracking that and making sure we don't to the best of our ability not extend these contracts.
The reason I asked you that question was, may I make a suggestion that in the future, when you have contracts for construction work that will either impede traffic or have some adverse effect, that you notify the local community boards of the date of contemplated commencement and the date of contemplated completion so that they can factor that in terms of their own planning?
We do try to do that. We have a pretty extensive community outreach program. We have facility-based engineers who who work with local community boards as well as facility-based operations staff, as well as a public communications staff, intergovernmental relations staff. So between those three groups, we try to do a good job of communicating with those communities, but, you know, of course, we can always improve what we're doing.
Based on solely one experience, I would suggest you might take another look at whether you can reinvigorate that process.
We certainly will do that.
We need a motion on the procurements. Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks. Our final agenda item is the diversity report. Sean Moore.
Hello, MTA B&T Diversity Report for the second quarter begins on page 146. MTA Bridges and Tunnel Workforce Demographics for the second quarter reflects unutilization of females in the officials and administrators job category, Hispanics in the administrative support and service maintenance job categories, and unutilization of Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders in several job categories. Despite this, the overall workforce composition experienced significant gains. Between January 1 through June 30th, MTA Bridges and Tunnel onboarded 36 new hires, 22% females, 56% minorities, and 44% non-minorities. In the officials and administrators category, the percentage of females increased from 22% to 26%. And the percentage for Hispanics, American Indian, Alaska Native, and other categories increased and reached parity within the MTA Bridges and Tunnel current labor market demographics. On pages 151, we have our EEO and Title VI complaints. Bridges and Tunnel EEO caseload includes a total of 18 EEO complaints. We have 12 active internal and 6 active external EEO complaints. During the second quarter, we closed out 1, and there are no Title VI complaints currently. The efforts to improve unutilization, recruitment, and retention strategies, as outlined on pages 154 through 156, will be presented by Acting President Spiro this afternoon at the MTA Diversity Committee. If there are no questions, that concludes the MTA Bridges and Tunnel EEO report.
That concludes our agenda.
Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your maiden voyage with us.